Okay, we're back within Sinu, Jesu. We are discussing page 88 and Jesus' response to the holy monk about prayer and liturgy and how the beauty is characterized through both of these. And we were looking at this article that parallels what we are talking about, worship without an agenda. Now, once again, he says, the ad orientem, that is, everybody facing east, is when the priest had his back towards the people.
Right. That's how it used to be.
Now, in the Jewish service, the rabbi faces east when he goes to get the scrolls. And everyone is facing that direction.
Even if the church is built the other way?
No, it's the altar.
Something,
Like, say this is the altar,
really something.
okay?
It is.
So, the priest would be this way, like we used to be
It's like the Byzantine.
Yeah.
when you were growing up.
But what if that is not east in the church?
Right.
Right? The church is not built.
All
like that.
churches are facing east. The altar has to face east no matter what. Now, when we say that, we mean that in terms of liturgical terminology. Okay? Like we say, used to say in the Third Eucharistic Prayer, from east to west.
A perfect offering.
Okay? Now, in terms of liturgical terminology, east is the direction where Jesus rose from the dead. Okay. Crucified on Calvary. So, those are liturgical terms we're referring to. The same in the temple. When Jesus went to the temple, Israel is in the east. Jerusalem is in the east. Bethlehem is in the east. Nazareth is in the east. Now you see the liturgical terminology, how it's derived.
Yeah.
It's the Holy Land. Okay, where the place where Christ was born and so forth. That's the liturgical terminology that he's referring when we say we face east. Okay? Now, if you go to the Byzantine church, they have an accurate liturgical terminology of facing east. Okay. So, when we say the east, we're talking about the place of Christ. Okay? Everyone understand that? If you go to this class, you'll hear that. Because it's the place by which, in the temple, when Jesus sat and taught in the temple, all the rabbis were in an easterly direction, no matter where they were in Jerusalem. That's why the comment was made about Christ. Can anything good come from Nazareth?
Oh, that's.
Okay, you remember that in the scripture?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So that terminology is liturgical terminology that we're referring to. So the priest faces with the people. Everybody faces one direction. Okay? Facing the people was brought in by Thomas Cranmer, who was an Anglican reformer. Back in the time of Henry VIII, they wanted to differentiate themselves from the Roman Church. So they face the people. The High Anglicans still face the East, like the Roman Church. Lutheranism did the same, face the people. And did away with the high altars. The documents of the Second Vatican Council never said to take down the high altars in the Roman Church.
How come they did?
If you read the documents and the post-conciliar documents, all it says is to have an altar facing the people. Nothing about taking out altars or railings or anything of that sort. That started in Holland and made its way across Europe into the United States.
That's why St. Paul's still has that altar.
That's why St. Paul still has that altar. So that if, let's say, a bishop of this diocese says, we're going to say Mass ad orientem, all he has to do is move that one altar out. They're right there.
Where did this start, Father?
Holland.
Holland. St. John's has their altar.
St. John, St. Joseph's,
We have our
St. Peter's has theirs.
St. Philip and
James.
James.
St. Philip and James.
St. Louis doesn't.
Oh, that
No, that's been gone for years.
St. Peter.
I'm trying to think where else. St. Joe's Alliance still has the altar, which could be moved back.
If
The way it's made, that altar could be moved back. Or the priest can just come around and face the front. The tabernacle's right there also. That's why a lot of bishops are moving tabernacles back to the center in dioceses. Now, like I said, I was up in Cleveland Diocese this weekend. The tabernacle's in the center.
Oh, yeah. Queen of Heaven.
Youngstown, it was off to the right.
Yeah.
And that was, I was shocked.
Yeah. So they're starting to do that.
What church in Cleveland?
Queen of Heaven.
Queen of Heaven.
Yeah, well, the cathedral has the altar in the center.
Which, the tabernacle, that's what I said. Cleveland Diocese has it. Yes.
Queen of Heaven in green? Or where?
Yes.
No, they don't have the high altar.
I just had Mass there Saturday.
I was just there Monday.
The tabernacle's in the center.
Oh, yeah, okay, but it doesn't have like the old, yeah.
No, because they just built that church.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like in a
Yeah, the old church was taken down. It was called a different name then. Then they built this new one when they merged the churches in that area.
That little flower.
But he could face ad
Flower
orientem.
never had that.
That altar could be moved back. He said, no problem. So there are things that are beginning to happen. Now he goes on here to say, traditional worship is no longer controversial among the faithful. Quite the opposite. They are eager for it and will support any priest willing to help them restore the beauty and sacredness of their parish. I first began exploring this thesis several years ago after being warned that any attempt to restore our Catholic heritage in a parish would cause a riot in the pew. I wasn't so sure about that, so I began forming impromptu focus groups. At the pub after evening Mass, I asked young adults how they would react to an ad orientem Mass. Their responses ranged from high enthusiastic to, at worst, a shrug of the shoulders, which indicated that they would be fine with it. There was not a single negative response. I've asked this question to other groups of all ages. With only a few exceptions, responses have been the same. The Catholics I have queried have no experience of ad orientem worship and no experience of the extraordinary form of the Mass. Yet they are insistently attracted to the beautiful, changing worship to make full use of all the treasures of patrimony. New generations have lost interest in the partisanism of warfare under the guise of prayer. There's a sense among them that something has been missing from our parishes. They have grown up attending as if a hand has closed over the precious gem and hidden from its sight. For them, incense, chanting, ad orientem are not sentimental nostalgia, but or retrograde political statements. It isn't a conservative protest against the church. Quite opposite. Traditional worship is seen to be the living, breathing lifeblood of the modern, relevant church. It's Vatican II. That's what Vatican II wanted. If you go back and read the documents on the sacred liturgy, what he's saying is exactly what John the 23rd wanted, what Paul the 6th wanted,
John Paul II.
John Paul the First, John Paul II, Benedict the 16th, and Pope Francis, who has encouraged bishops to go to ad orientem.
Are they encouraging Latin masses?
Latin masses, yes. A lot of dioceses do. In fact, we have them in the Youngstown Diocese.
Akron.
Cleveland has it.
Akron.
Columbus, Toledo, Dayton, Steubenville. Mostly all the dioceses now have at least one Latin Mass. The one in Youngstown, that is a parish, with the permission of their bishop and our bishop, had to add a Mass because they couldn't fit all the people in. The church there seats 400 people. Averaging a Sunday at their 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock Mass, because there's no Saturday night, they average anywhere between 500 to 600 people.
What church is that?
That's in Vienna. It's called, senior moment. I think it's Our Lady of the Rosary. It's a beautiful church. It's made in the Spanish style. It's as you're coming into Youngstown off of Route 193 into Vienna. Right at the square, you make a left turn. And you follow that road all the way down. And I forget the name of the street, but you can't go any further. You make a left turn onto that road. And you'll see the rectory and the church, the social hall. It's a huge facility. And what they've been doing for the overflow now, on the last Mass on Sunday, they've been having Mass in the hall.
So many.
Because they come from all over. They come from not only Youngstown, they come from East Liverpool, Canton, Akron, Columbiana, Deerfield, Canfield, all over. And that church is packed.
That is church, because
Yeah.
it's not just a building.
Right. And I think the one in Akron, I think, is St. Mary's.
Yes.
As Latin mass?
Yes.
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 St.
What time is there?
I thought
Do
it
you
was
know,
St.
Ralph?
Bernard's.
Huh?
St. Bernard's. No.
Is it St. Mary's in
St.
Akron?
Mary's in Akron.
St. Mary's in Akron.
1 o'clock.
St.
I think.
Bernard's. Okay.
It's either at 12 o'clock or 1
One, I believe.
on Sunday.
St. Sebastian's at 1 o'clock.
And St. Sebastian's, the other
Sundays.
one.
In St. Sebastian's, yes.
And
St. Mary's just up there.
And the cathedral, I think, St. John's, I think, is at 12 in downtown Cleveland.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 12 o'clock in downtown Cleveland. But if you have never been at St. John's Cathedral in Cleveland, If you want to see architecture like you couldn't believe, you got to stop in there. The cherry wood along the walls coming into that cathedral and in the chancel and in the sanctuary is something that you'll remember all your life. When Bishop Lennon was there, we got to be good friends. I spoke in his diocese quite a bit. And he had me speak at the cathedral and at a pro-life rally. And he showed me all around that cathedral. And in the back side, where the priest rests, when you come in the side up the steps, there's cherry wood with the carving of St. John the Apostle. As you enter the priest sacristy.
Beautiful.
And then when you go in the priest sacristy, it's a long room. It's about the size of this. And there's like vestment cases that come straight across. And each section has the different dependias, altar cloths, and so forth. And then the cherry wood closets, when you open them, they open out and the vestments come out on a roller.
Wow.
And inside is that, what do they call that wood?
Yeah,
Cedar.
cedar.
Cedar, yes. Cedar wood. And it really is amazing. And the same in the altar boy sacristy. Then when you come around and go down the side, you could see like the cubicles, and then you come to the main body of the church. You could eat off the floor in that cathedral. That's how clean it is. Books put in a nice, neat place. The hymnals, nothing's out of place. Whoever cleans that cathedral for them does a magnificent job. You could take your finger and run it across the pew, and you will not find a speck of dust. And that's downtown Cleveland.
We were there. We went with St. Raphael's group for that pro-life mass up there that the bishop had, and
Yes.
it was beautiful. It's beautiful, beautiful.
So I mean, they take pride in their facility. Then he goes on here to say, there is a sense among them that something has been missing, okay? If a hen has closed the door over a precious gem and hidden fish from the sight, for them incense, chanting, autorientem are not sentimental nostalgia. It isn't conservative protest. Okay. If it is true that battles over the liturgy in recent memory function as proxy for theological and political battles among various interest groups in the church, that is no longer the case. The vigor for the battle has petered out. New generations of Catholics have lost interest in the patriotism warfare under the guise of prayer. They are hungry for beauty and the search of authenticity. That's why young people are not going to church. They are going to churches that have the Latin Mass. Once again, if you go to any of those churches, you will find the youth in the choir singing. They are the ones that asked John Paul II, and he granted the permission. You go to the Youth Ministry Conference in Washington, D.C. for World Youth Day. The bishop has the Mass in Latin, and those kids sing their hearts out.
That's a special group of kids. That's not the normal kids today.
Well, no, we're not talking about,
I'll
These
tell you
kids-
what, the more you
The
show
mo-
them tradition, the more active they become.
Right, and that's what a lot of these catechetical programs did. In Virginia, Washington, and in Maryland, Pennsylvania, they went back to the traditional form of teaching catechism. And they used, what they did was, they started with the high school with the Vatican II documents
To teach them.
and taught the kids about Vatican II. They showed the film about Vatican II, on how John the 23rd and what he wanted. And then they showed the roots of the liturgy, like you're talking about there, that program. My classmate in Maryland has this program. He showed it to their CCD, high school first. And the reason he did that was to show them the roots of our faith. They went to him afterwards and said, Father, can we do like those people did there? They did it in their language.
Wow.
Can we also use Latin? He said, yeah. So they wanted to do Latin hymns on Sunday morning at the 10:30 Mass. So he told the kids, you get the group together, you form it, you talk with the organist, we'll do it. They did it. So that program she's talking about, believe me, if you show that to kids, it will spark interest in them. And a lot of catechetical programs are using this. It is a good program.
He's very,
Believe me.
He's very delightful. He's so
It's
excited.
the
about
presentation.
telling you. Yeah, presentation's great. Yeah.
The presentation, the way it's presented. And that's what led to this. Because people saw this and they're thinking to themselves, wait a minute. What he's talking about makes sense. We're talking about prayer. Not about, you go to some of these modern masses where you got these snare drums and cymbals and bang bang and all this stuff. When you see this video and you listen to this guy,
A deep appreciation.
it gives you the impression that what he's saying is prayer. Prayer and faith. And when you look at this and see how it developed throughout the course of history, then you ask yourself, yeah, what the heck is all this drum stuff that takes away from prayer?
Absolutely.
When he's talking about devotion and the roots of faith. I mean, if you do get a chance, if you don't know how to get there, I'm sure she'll give you
It's
directions.
easy to get.
But if you get a chance to see this, or if they show it again on EWTN, watch their television guide. Make sure you see this program. It's worthwhile. I mean, they had it like 10 Thursdays, and they ran it from 11 p.m. to midnight. But I mean, just to see it. And they did it that way to show the idea that it led right into the Mass.
We are the completion of the Jewish faith.
Exactly. That's what Christ was talking about.
The new Passover. The new
See,
covenant.
that's the whole essence of it. And that's what he's saying in this article. Because then he goes on here to say that the vigor for the battle has petered out. Okay. The Mass has shaken free from artificial constraints. No more politics, no more baggage, no more dryness or diversities of encountering wonderful discoveries. Traditional ritual meditates on the unnamed desire to connect with our ancestors. Okay? That's it right there.
The Melchizedek priest. Way back.
So now you see why the Bishop of St. Louis said ad orientem is fine and insists upon it. It connects with our ancestors. And that's what she's talking about there. When you see this video, you want to go back and see it again. Believe me.
There's so much information. Oh,
It is. I mean, there's so much there. Then he goes on, he says Traditional rituals meditate the unchained desire, the unveiled mystery. It brings about the mystery. Just like in the Jewish faith, when Jesus, with his apostles, remember there's the two phrases in the scripture where Jesus on Palm Sunday is asked the question, where do you want us to prepare the Passover supper? Then, Holy Thursday, the question is, where do you want us to prepare the Passover? There's the Seder meal, then there's the Passover. Go back in the book of Exodus when Moses established this. His son asks him, Father, why is this night special? And he explains the two different separations. They ate the meal. Okay? Then the fourth cup was put aside of wine. Matzah bread was covered and put aside. That's the Passover. It was why they put the blood of the lamb on the doorposts. He'll explain all of that in this video. It's two separate entities. That's how it is within the liturgy that he is saying here. Now you see here the bishop is saying the Mass ad orientem. Now he goes on here to explain, just as in here. Let's look on page 88 for a moment. This is also my mother's desire for you, and she will help you to attain it. Listen for her guidance, her inspiration. Follow her wise direction. In this she is the pure instrument of the Holy Spirit, who at every moment brings out of chaos, peace, of decision, unity, out of multiplicity. Now, which means, out of the chaos and mess that we're in now with liturgy, will come this peace and tranquility because the Blessed Mother herself
Will bring it about.
was Jewish.
Yes.
Saint Joseph was a Jew.
Jesus was a Jew.
We understand the facsimiles here. They didn't go to temple for humdrum. They went to temple for prayer. Mary is seen as the Ark of the Covenant.
Right.
Sheen called her that because she was the first tabernacle of the Most High God.
Right.
Therefore, now in this article, he goes on, he says here, traditional ritual meditates the desire to connect with our ancestors, see the face of the divine through beauty, feel the weight of the veiled mystery as the next world presses down upon this one, and embarked on a heroic journey to find our way home. Here finally in a world that is worn and weary is something that cannot be consumed. It must be encountered. It must be wrestled with, contended for. The Mass is all sacred glory, and it is the ark. In that video, what was the most sacred element to the Hebrew people? The ark.
The Ark.
The sacred element for us, the ark, the Mass. The Torah is housed in the ark. And if you go to a Jewish temple, right behind their wall, the doors are made like the ark. And the doors open and they take out the Torah. For us, when the door opens, we take out the Christ. There. The church's mystery is her strength, her traditions and luminous glow, the ancient beauty, the calm, the worship, the prayer. If the Eucharist is one great love worth giving our lives to, it would be the Mass. It cannot be any different, whether it's English or Latin. Ad Orientem is coming back, and it will be here to stay. The Diocese of St. Louis will begin the first Sunday of Advent in all parish churches, Ad Orientem. There you see the bishop at the cathedral instructing the people on Ad Orientem. It'll be the English Mass the way Vatican II wanted it. And then he said, within the Diocese of St. Louis, they do have the extraordinary form of the liturgy, as we do in the Diocese of Youngstown, Cleveland, and so forth. So we see this. And as she's pointing out, like I say, if you get a chance to go up to Philip and James, to listen to this and see it, please do so.
What was the name of the series?
The name of the series again?
It's Discovering the Mass in the Old and New Testaments. It's about the Eucharist.
Yeah,
It says
if
Eucharist
you
and
remember
then-
the old video, the old film strip, it was called From Exodus to the Mass. Now it's entitled...
Discovering the Mass in the Old and New Testament.
Yeah.
But he starts with Genesis and goes all
Right,
the way
it goes
through
right from...
Revelation.
In fact, right here in our book, on the bottom of page 88, the third footnote, which we were just talking about, Blessed Mother, and the way it starts, is Genesis, where it all starts. Genesis chapter 1, 2, then it goes to Exodus. You see there at the bottom of the page. Okay, so, any question on this? If you did not get this, please make sure you take one. Call them today, get registered for both sessions so that you are down for the classes. Okay, we thank you for joining us in our session today and on Sinu Jesu. May God bless you, and we'll see you next time.